Bismillah, we begin with Allah's name, asking for His help, for His blessings, and for His protection. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah, we thank Him, and we glorify Him. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. We ask Allah to bless the Messenger, to elevate his mention and rank, and to shower him with protection and grace. Welcome to this live session, this webinar titled The Messenger Muhammad. This is under the theme Stories of the Messengers. If you've been with us before, you know that whenever I speak, I focus on one of several themes. Sometimes we speak on the names of Allah, getting to know Allah, which is our primary purpose of existence, because without knowing Him, we cannot fulfill what He has asked of us, which is to serve Him, to worship Him, to show gratitude to Him, and to obey Him. I also speak on the subject of the Quran, different chapters that have specific virtues, also connecting with the Quran, because the Quran is the speech of God. It's the final testament to humanity, and it is our way to guidance and our way to salvation. So the Quran is very significant, very important. It's also one of the foundational beliefs in Islam, to believe in God's scriptures, and specifically the scripture that was sent to us being the final community and the followers of the final messenger of God. I also speak on the subject of dua, which is the culmination of different acts of worship, to call unto God and to make requests and to petition Him in prayer. Category in dua that we speak about regularly is steadfastness, to remain steadfast and to remain firm on the faith of Islam. And then the theme of today, stories of the messengers, and this happens to be one of the foundational beliefs in Islam, to believe in the messengers of God. So we try to look into different messengers, and we cover a brief introduction to their lives and their ministries. Some of us, if we come from a Christian or Jewish background, we are familiar with the biblical prophets and messengers. Now, the names may seem the same, but the details of the stories are different. And the Quran and the Messenger Muhammad basically set the record straight on these aspects where there is a difference. I always like to speak about the Messenger Muhammad because he's really the most important messenger of God. We come from different backgrounds. If we, like I said, as converts to Islam, people who have embraced Islam, we're familiar with the biblical prophets. We may have certain ideas that are distorted because, unfortunately, the Bible does not paint them in the best light. And specifically for Jesus, the Messiah, the Christians take him as a God, or as the Son of God, or as one of a triune head God, one of three in a Trinity, whereas the Jews reject him completely, curse him, mock him and his mother, and they claim to have killed him. So Islam is actually a balance between those two groups, and that happens to be a theme overall in Islam, the theme of not being on either side of the extreme of going beyond the bounds and worshiping the messengers of God or attributing divinity to them, or the extreme of rejecting the messengers of God or mocking them or painting them in a negative light. Now, the Messenger Muhammad does not necessarily appear in the Bible in the sense of most people don't know that there are references to the Messenger Muhammad in the Bible. Although I have a large book behind me in this bookshelf titled Muhammad in the Bible, and for any of those of you who are interested in this subject, that would be a good reference work. But you'll see that people differ about these references. What is the Bible referring to in these passages? There is big difference among the biblical scholars. Nonetheless, when we come to Islam, and you've all have experienced this if you embrace Islam. Earlier, one of the sisters said she made her shahada about a year ago. or last October, so less than a year. So the Shahada. So whoever has made the Shahada is the statement of faith, the testimony that we make, which is, I testify, I bear witness that there is no deity deserving of worship except for the one and only true God, Allah. And I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God, is a messenger of Allah. Now, we spend a lot of time, and rightfully so, getting to know Allah. I said earlier that that is our primary purpose. Allah created us so we can discover him, so we get to know him. But he did not leave us to our own ways to figure out who he is. Rather, he sent us human messengers, and he sent us scriptures to tell us about himself, to introduce himself to us. And for us as Muslims, the final messenger of God who introduced God properly to humanity through his ministry is the messenger Muhammad. So it becomes very important for us to know the messenger Muhammad by extension. So you got to know your messenger because he is the means by which you are getting to know God Almighty. And I argue that it is in the order of things. If you want to get things in the proper order, you should get to know the messenger Muhammad first, because that's what happened in his lifetime. Before people found out about God and about the speech of God in the Quran, they had to interact with the man named Muhammad, who was relaying the message from God and who was God's representative, and who basically is the role model by which we can earn salvation. So all of that is to introduce our topic. So the messenger Muhammad, some of you may have attended previous sessions that we spoke about. We've described some things about him. I'm going to go through a couple of articles today. Hopefully we can cover what I have in mind. I'll start with this very short video. So I want you to turn your audio on. It's a very short article, which is titled "The Best of Men." The Best of Men. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm also going to share my audio. It's very brief, and it's basically like a summarized story of the messenger Muhammad. Let's see. This does not share audio for some reason. We need to share the audio as well. Share sound. Optimize for video. Okay, now hopefully it'll work. Let's see. I'm gonna be silent and I'm going to push play. Let's see how this goes.
The best of men, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As a young child, he never met his father. Then he lost his mother. Soon after, he lost his grandfather. When he was chosen to be Allah's messenger, his own people turned against him. He had to see his own companions being tortured. He then lost his beloved Khadija and staunch supporter Abu Talib. He was defamed, mocked and stoned. Eventually he was forced to leave his birthplace. His beloved companions were slain in battle. He lost his beloved uncle Hamza. He himself was wounded. Even towards the latter part of his life, enemies lurked outside and within. Plots were hatched to kill him. He was poisoned. Heinous accusations were made against his beloved Aisha. All of his children passed away in his lifetime except for one. Yet none of this made him bitter. Instead, he was the most empathetic, sensitive, and humble of all men. Instead of complaining, "Why me?" he would worship his beloved throughout the night. When reminded of being already forgiven by Allah, he remarked, "Should I not be a grateful servant?" He valued every individual and made every single person feel like they were the most beloved to him. He epitomized kindness, forgave easily, and when he got angry, it was only for Allah. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Okay, so this is a very brief video that describes the Messenger Muhammad. It's taken from an article titled "The Best of Men," which I will share with you so you can have it for yourself. I'm going to share the article right now because I want to highlight certain things for you all. Now, this is not the main subject, but it actually gives us a great idea about the Messenger Muhammad. So this is the article. It also has the video in it. Now I'm going to share the article itself, not the video. So give me a moment to make sure that I have the right link on. Okay, here we go. All right, which is basically the transcription of the video. The difference is that I'm not reading in a British accent. The reader of the article was reading in a British accent. You'll have to deal with my accent. I'm a California guy. Okay. So it starts like this. As a young child, he never met his father. Look, the title is The Best of Men. The Best of Men. As a young child, he never met his father. So this is a great part of his story, is that he was born an orphan. He was born an orphan. Sorry, why is this happening? Okay. Then he lost his mother. So shortly after losing his father, he lost his mother. So he loses both parents. This is a very difficult and challenging condition to be in, starting your life. Soon after, he lost his grandfather. Now, those three individuals are very important individuals in the life of people. Your mother and your father, the ones who bring you into this earth by God's command. Now, the reason why the grandfather is mentioned here is because the grandfather actually was his guardian, not just his legal guardian, but he took it upon himself to be responsible to take care of him. Now, lost his father before he was even born. He lost his mother at around 4 years of age. He lost his grandfather at around 6. So these are major life events where he is losing very important and significant individuals in his life. So then this skips all the way until he gets to be 40, when God chooses him to be a messenger. When he was chosen to be Allah's messenger, his own people turned against him. So you see, it briefly touches on his childhood and upbringing, doesn't really discuss it much. Okay? He had to see his own companions being tortured. This is in the very early days of his ministry. So his ministry lasts 23 years. In the very beginning, the first 13 years were extremely difficult because they were a persecuted minority in a larger society that was not very friendly, was not very gracious towards them. There was no freedom of religion because he was challenging the status quo. He was challenging the ways of the ancestors, and basically people did not take that very well. So his own people turned against him. That's what it's referring to. The same people that used to actually love him, respect him. He had he came from a prominent family, but all of a sudden now that he's preaching this message, which is strange in that land, although way early on when that land was established by Abraham, that was the way of Abraham. But through the generations, people lost track of what the original message was. He had to see his own companions being tortured. That was the persecution, especially in the early days, once he became public. So he spent 3 years speaking to people and preaching to a very small group, and it was an underground or an undercover movement. You can say a secret society within the larger Meccan society. But eventually he announced the call. He was commanded by God to announce it and to publicize it. And as soon as he publicized it, that's when the persecution started. He then lost his beloved Khadija. Khadija is his first wife. So Khadija is the mother of the believers. She is the first wife, and she was actually the first individual to accept him as the messenger of God. She believed in him as soon as he had the experience of receiving the angel in the cave, receiving revelation. So Khadija is extremely important. She's also known as one of the best of all women, one of the 4 perfect women throughout human history. The staunch supporter Abu Talib is his uncle. Abu Talib is his uncle who basically takes care of him after his grandfather dies. So he was under the care of his uncle Abu Talib, and he keeps him under his care basically for 40 years. From 8 years of age when he lost his grandfather all the way until he's almost 50 or around 50. So he's under the care of this uncle of his. Now, mind you, his uncle Abu Talib never accepted his message. He knew that it was the truth. He defended him. He defended his honor, but he never actually accepted him as a messenger of God. And again, this shows us how people in the life of the messenger and today in our lives as Muslims may have different approaches to us becoming Muslim. Some of our family members may be supportive and they may actually join us in Islam. Some of them, like Khadija was supportive and she joined the messenger and she was his biggest supporter. She spent her wealth supporting his ministry. Some of our relatives will be extremely supportive, but will not make the choice to switch from the ways of the ancestors to the new way. And they could be like an Abu Talib in a sense. Abu Talib died and he was not a Muslim. So this year, actually, I want you to highlight something. Just make mental notes. If you're taking notes, you can also jot it down. That year, the year when he lost Khadija and he lost his uncle Abu Talib, that year was a very difficult year in his life. It was known as the year of grief, the year of sadness. And there is a lot of lessons to be learned from that experience. And for us, again, as regular mortals who are not messengers of God, but who also will experience difficulties in life, how should we deal with loss? How should we deal with grief? And how should we deal with having no protection? Khadija protected him inside his house. She was his confidant. His uncle protected him outside of the house. He was his patron and who sponsored him and protected him. So now he lost both of those in the span of 1 year. So it was very difficult on him. But again, the lesson from that year is, how do we deal with loss? I'm going to give you some further resources. I have at least a whole lecture, if not multiple hours, on the year of sadness in the life of the Messenger Muhammad. So I would invite you to check that out. He was defamed, mocked, and stoned. So this is something that happened from the moment he publicized his ministry, but it really escalated once he lost the support of his uncle Abu Talib, because there was no more a prominent figure to defend him. So the people took advantage of the fact that he has no defender, and they started basically going after him. So defamation, that's not pleasant. Basically, people are accusing you of lies, libel and defamation. Mockery, so someone who is intelligent, someone who's honest, and someone who is on a very high caliber of character, all of a sudden now is being called a madman, a sorcerer, and a poet, although he was none of those 3 things. And then he was stoned. So physically, he gets attacked. So physical abuse. So this is not simply people just talking bad to him, but they escalated matters, and it took a physical toll on him through stoning and through different forms of physical abuse. Eventually, he was forced to leave his birthplace. So again, for you taking notes, his birthplace is Mecca. Okay, this is important. Mecca is where we face the Kaaba whenever we perform salah. That's the place that Abraham established. That's the temple that Abraham built. That was the birthplace of the Messenger Muhammad. So it's extremely important to know that. And that's also connected to us learning Islam, because when he leaves his birthplace, that basically signifies to us the end of what's known as the Meccan period of his life. The Meccan period of his life, when he leaves his birthplace, and then he goes to the second important place in Islam called Medina. That is where he migrated to. So the first 40 years of his life, he's born and raised in Mecca. Yes, he travels for business because his people were merchants and they would travel to the Levant, to the north, and to Yemen in the south. But for the most part, he just stayed in Mecca. That was his place. That was his environment. After 40 years, God chooses him to be the messenger, and he preaches for 3 years undercover, underground, and then he publicizes the ministry for the next 10 years. So 13 years is the ministry in Mecca, called the Meccan period of his life, or of his ministry. Then he goes to Medina. What happens in Medina? His beloved companions were slain in battle. So once they establish an Islamic community in Medina, their enemies are going after them. It wasn't enough to persecute them in Mecca. They actually came and wanted to have a showdown multiple times with the Muslims in Medina. So his early disciples and the early believers, not only were they persecuted and tortured in Mecca, but even in Medina, through the military campaigns, some of them were slain. He lost his beloved uncle Hamza. So Hamza is the brother of Abu Talib. Okay? So you see, one uncle was a supporter, but did not embrace the faith and died in Mecca. This other uncle, Hamza, was a supporter physically as well, and he embraced the faith, and he was one of those people who was slain in battle. Specifically, the Battle of Uhud, which is the second major showdown between the Muslims in the time of the Messenger Muhammad and the disbelievers, the people of Mecca at the time. He himself was wounded. So he was wounded in battle. He participated in the battles. He wasn't someone who was basically running away or shying from confrontation when it was a just war and to defend the faith and to defend the believers and to defend the community. He himself participated. Even towards the latter part of his life. So now the second part of his life and his ministry is the final 10 years, and those he spends in Medina. The enemies lurked outside and within. So you have enemies from outside, the Meccans, and also a lot of the tribes that were surrounding Medina, but you had enemies from within. Within the city of Medina, you had a Jewish community who was conspiring against the believers, against the Muslims, although they should have been together because they both believe in the one true God and they want to follow his commandments, and they should be against the pagans and the idolaters. But unfortunately, that's not what transpired. So that's one enemy from within. And then another enemy within, the hypocrites. So a group of people who identified as Muslims, but their allegiance was not to the believers and was not towards Allah and his messenger. Plots were hatched to kill him. So the Jewish community actually plotted to kill him multiple times. And that was one of the reasons why they had to be driven out of Medina. He was poisoned. One Jewish lady invited him for a meal, and he used to accept people's invitations. So he ate from the meal that she prepared for him, but she had poisoned the food that he ate. Heinous accusations were made against his beloved Aisha. Aisha is his wife as well, but this is a wife that he marries after Khadija. Khadija was his first wife. He marries multiple wives throughout his life. Aisha happens to be the youngest of them all. She also becomes a very scholarly figure in Islam. So a lot of the domestic reports that we have about the life of the Messenger Muhammad, we get them through Aisha. So she's also known as one of the mothers of the believers. That's the appropriate title for the wives of the Messenger Muhammad. We call them the mothers of the believers. That's what God Almighty called them in the Quran. It says in the passage of the Quran in chapter 33 of the Quran that ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين. Muhammad was not the father of any of your any of your men, because he didn't have any male children. However, he is the messenger of God and the final of his prophets. Elsewhere it says, وَأَزْوَاجُهُ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ, and the wives of the messenger are the mothers of the believers. So they made accusations against her. This was a plot by the hypocrites, basically accusing her of immorality. And God revealed chapter of the Quran, chapter 24 of the Quran, to refute that accusation. Okay? All of his children passed away in his lifetime except for one. So this is another major difficulty. You know, nothing is more painful for a parent than to lose their children, whether in infancy, and that happened to some of his children, he lost them in infancy, or in adulthood, and that happened to others among his children. And the final of his children that passed after his death, it was only 6 months after his death, and he had already received that message from God that your daughter will outlive you, but it's only going to be 6 months and then she will pass away. And he actually informed her of this on his deathbed as she was already grieving for having about to lose him. So he told her, let me tell you something. Yes, I am going to pass, but you will be the first of my family to join me, basically, in a short period of time. Yet none of this made him bitter. So again, you notice that there is a lot of difficult things that are mentioned, right? The loss of his loved ones, the persecution, the accusations to his person, to his family. Okay, none of this made him bitter. Instead, he was the most empathetic, sensitive, and humble of all men. Instead of complaining and asking, why me? He would worship his beloved. That is referring to God. God should be the ultimate beloved in our lives. We should love God more than anyone else. So God should be number one in our lives, not just as our creator, but our relationship with him should be based on ultimate love. So we should love no one as we love God Almighty. The love of God should supersede the love of everyone and everything. So the Messenger Muhammad would worship God, his beloved, throughout the night. He would stand up in night vigil worshiping God. When reminded of being already forgiven by Allah, he would be told, why are you doing all this? You're making it difficult on yourself. Because he would stand up for so long that his feet would swell up and they would crack because of how long he would stand in a stationary position. Out of humility and respect before God, he would say, should I not be a grateful servant? So he basically recognized his station with God, but he wanted to show gratitude, and that gratitude is shown through devotion and worship. He valued every individual and made every single person feel like they were the most beloved to him. This is common. So many of the people that lived with him would say, I felt like he loved me more than anyone else, because he made everyone feel very special. And he made them all feel like they meant the world to him. And that's a great gift that God endowed him with. He epitomized kindness. So he's the epitome of kindness. He forgave easily. And when he got angry, it was only for Allah. Meaning, his anger was limited to whenever someone would break the commands of God. That's why he would be angry. He would be angry. Basically, it's called righteous anger or righteous indignation. He's angry for the sake of God because God was blasphemed or God was disrespected or somebody did not show reverence to God. And then, of course, the end of this is Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which is the prayer that we make, asking God Almighty to bless him and to protect him and to shower him with grace. Okay? So that's one article I wanted to share. Now we're going to move on to, hopefully we can cover what I had in mind, because we're already halfway. So this is a brief biography of the Messenger Muhammad, the Meccan period. So you already should have something in the background now, knowing that the life of the Messenger Muhammad is divided into two parts, Mecca and Medina. Mecca is the first 40 years of his life. So he's still before receiving revelation, he wasn't a messenger yet. At 40, he gets commissioned as a messenger, and he spends the next 13 years in his ministry. Then you have the Medina period, which is the final 10 years of his life, after he is forced to flee from his birthplace and the place where the temple of Abraham sits, which is the Kaaba, and he goes to Medina. Okay? So the description of this lesson is that it's the early life of the Messenger Muhammad. What's the objectives? What are we trying to get out of this? To understand the influences in Muhammad's early life, to understand the political situation at the time, to realize and ponder the difficulties suffered by the first Muslims. The last part is very pertinent for us. Some of us, again, may be facing difficulties because of the decision to convert to Islam. It may be our families that are giving us a hard time. It may be our society. It may be our neighborhood. It may be our neighbors. It may be our workplace. It may be our government. It may be different forces. Okay? So it's good for us to see the example of the early Muslims and how they faced the difficulties and the challenges and the persecution in their lives. Okay, some of the Arabic terms that will appear in this article is the Kaaba. So that's the cube-shaped structure located in the city of Mecca. We have a whole ebook about the Kaaba. I highly recommend that we all take a look at it. NewMuslimAcademy.org ebooks. It serves as a focal point toward which all Muslims face when praying. Now, you see a picture here. In the very center where you see my arrow, that's the Kaaba. Everything else, that's called the Grand Mosque of Mecca. Okay? And this is a relatively new building, the Grand Mosque. In the time of the Messenger Muhammad, none of these buildings were around. You got skyscrapers here, the biggest tower in the world, probably, the clock tower, it's called. These are all new developments in right now, in our lifetime. But the Kaaba is the actual cube structure, and that's where all the Muslims face. When we were looking at the article earlier in the video, you saw another mosque which had the green dome. The green dome, that mosque is where the Messenger Muhammad lived in Medina. That's called the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. So you got the Grand Mosque is the most important location in Islam. And then you got the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, which is where the green dome is. He's actually buried under that green dome. So that's his house. He was living there. He was buried in his house. And then way later on, they built that green dome. So that's just for you to make the association. Mecca and Medina. Okay. Muhammad, may the mercy and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the man loved by the world's more than 1.5 billion Muslims. He is also respected by those of other faiths and beliefs. Not all of them, some of them. As you all know, it should not be a surprise to you, but there is others who actually hate him and they don't give him respect. Okay? So this is not like a universally binding thing that everyone respects the Messenger Muhammad. Unfortunately, a lot of people are very disrespectful to him. Just like we said earlier, the Jews disrespect Jesus and his mother. They also disrespect Muhammad for the most part. Because for them, they're not going to accept any messenger that comes after the rabbis establish their religion. Okay? That's why they rejected the Messiah. They rejected his mother, the Virgin Mary, and they rejected Muhammad. So that starts from a very early period, and it continues to our very day. So that's why you may be familiar with people in Christianity who speak about the Messenger Muhammad in a very negative light. So we're not just talking about atheists. Atheists, of course, they hate him because they hate God. So naturally, they're going to hate any representative of God. They deny that God even exists. But you have people who supposedly believe in God, yet they have a lot of negativity towards the Messenger Muhammad. Throughout history and around the world, non-Muslims have shown great respect and honor to Muhammad, and he is considered influential in both religious and secular matters. Again, I would say some, not all. Now, I'm going to give you a reference to see where a lot of philosophers and wise people throughout history have spoken well of the Messenger Muhammad. So it's not all a dark picture, but I just want us to be balanced, because when you read something like this, I don't want you to think this is gospel. Like whatever is said here, okay, that means it's agreed upon. Everyone loves him. That's not the case, okay? Not everyone loves God himself. Always remember that. Like when you're going to say, well, how come not everyone loves Muhammad? Not everyone loves God. So again, they're not going to necessarily love the representative of God. It was the Messenger Muhammad that Allah revealed the Quran, and Muslims are urged to imitate his behavior and moral standards. This is because Muhammad's life was the Quran. He understood it, loved it, and he lived his life based on its standards. When Muslims declare their faith in Allah, they also declare their belief that Muhammad is a slave and messenger. We all did that when we took our shahada. So that's the first thing that we do as we enter the door of Islam, is we testify our faith in God Almighty and that we are following the messenger Muhammad. Side point, his slave and messenger. The word slave may not be the best rendition of the word abd in this context. A better rendition that I personally prefer would be devoted servant, because the relationship that Muhammad has with God is not like chattel slavery. That's what we're familiar with when we talk about slavery. Rather, he was a devoted servant to God. Okay? And that's the case with all the messengers, and that's the case with the believers in general. Muhammad, may the mercy and blessings of Allah be upon him, is beloved by many. His behavior is studied and emulated, but who exactly is this man? So that's the question that we want to answer in today's webinar. Where did he come from? Where and when was he born? What exactly makes him a man esteemed above other men? What makes him the best of men? Remember, we mentioned that in the earlier article. Allah calls him a mercy to humankind. So this is mentioned in the Quran. Okay? He says, you are a mercy to humankind. Thus, it is wise for us to know as much as possible about this man. Not just wise. I would say it's not just wise to know about him. This is for all humanity. It's wise for them. But for us as Muslims, it is incumbent for us to know as much as possible about him. In the following lesson, we will briefly discuss Muhammad's life and times. The life of Muhammad can be divided into two distinct periods, the Meccan period and the Medinan period. I hope you understand what those represent now, because I've mentioned them a few times. Meccan represents Mecca, so that's the place where Abraham laid the foundation of the Kaaba, the temple of God, the house of God. And Medina is the location where the Messenger Muhammad eventually migrates with his community and is received by some of his disciples there that basically give him refuge and asylum. Those two cities are the religious headquarters of the Muslims. So our spiritual headquarters is Mecca and Medina. Also, our spiritual headquarters is Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is the land of all the previous messengers of God. Also, Jerusalem is where the Messenger Muhammad was commissioned and was granted the blessing of the 5 daily salah that we have as one of the most important actions in Islam, in something called the night journey, which happened in his lifetime. So he was taken from Mecca to Jerusalem, and from Jerusalem he was taken up to the heavens, and that's where God gifted him this devotion. The Meccan period, so that's what we're going to discuss now, the Meccan period. Muhammad was born in 570 Common Era, 570. So basically you're estimating it's about 600 years between him and Jesus, okay? So that time period was a time period when God did not send any messengers. He was born in the city of Mecca. Remember, we said his birthplace is Mecca, in the Arabian Peninsula, part of modern-day Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is a modern nation state. It's about 100 years old. But the Arabian Peninsula has been there for forever. So that's where he was born, the western side of the Arabian Peninsula. His father was named Abdullah. Okay, remember we said he lost his father before he was born, had died shortly after his marriage to Amina. The mother of the Messenger Muhammad, her name is Amina, the daughter of Wahb. So again, why is it important to know these names? Because you'll come across these names whenever you're reading the biography of the Messenger Muhammad. So it's good for you to familiarize yourself with these names. Also, you'll notice that many Muslims, they will choose to name their children certain names, and those names happen to be part of the life of the Messenger Muhammad. Okay? So Amina, the daughter of Wahb. Thus, Muhammad's guardianship fell to his grandfather Abdul Muttalib. Now you're seeing the chronological order. So his father died shortly after marriage to Amina, the daughter of Wahb. Muhammad's guardianship fell to his grandfather Abdul Muttalib. Who was Abdul Muttalib? He was a respected and well-liked leader of both the clan of Hashim. So Hashim happens to be the larger family of Muhammad, and then he was, which is a part of the influential tribe of Quraysh. So Quraysh is the big tribe in Mecca, and it has multiple clans. The specific clan, the big family of Muhammad, was named Hashim. Okay? Very important thing about Hashim that has to do with our lifetime right now. Gaza is known as Gaza of Hashim. This ancestor of the Messenger Muhammad actually was buried there in Gaza. So, you know, what's happening in the world today as Muslims, we have so much emotional attachment. Not only is it just the Holy Land, but it is part and parcel of our story as Muslims, the story of the Messenger of God. So just something to consider and to keep in the back of your mind. Gaza is connected to Hashim, this ancestor of Muhammad. As was the custom in those days, after birth, Muhammad was entrusted to a wet nurse named Halima. So that's another female name, Halima. Halima was the wet nurse that would take him in and go out to the desert. So his mother did not care for him in his infancy. And that was the tradition at that time. They would send their children out to be away from the city, away from disease, and to be in a clean and organic environment. I mean, we're talking about 1400 years ago or 1500 years ago, but they still wanted to be extra cautious. So this is before modernity, before pollution and all that stuff, but they wanted to protect their children from the influences of an urban center like Mecca at that time. She was from the nomadic tribe of Sa'd ibn Bakr. So that's why Halima is known as Halima as-Sa'diyya. Sa'diyya means the one who is from the tribe of Sa'd. Okay? So that's a Arabian tribe that exists until today. The tribe today is known as the tribe of Utayba. It's one of the biggest tribes in Arabia. Thus, he spent his early years in the hill country, learning the Bedouin ways and the pure Arabic language. So this tells you that he himself was not a Bedouin. He's a city dweller. His people are city dwellers. They're the merchants of Mecca, known as the tribe of Quraysh. But those people, they would send their children out to learn the ways of the desert, the ways of the Bedouins, and to learn the pure Arabic language that had not been adulterated by foreign influences. When Muhammad was 5 or 6, his mother took him to Yathrib. Yathrib is this town that later on becomes known as Medina. Historically, it was known as Yathrib, an oasis town north of Mecca, to stay with relatives and visit his father's grave there. Okay, so who are the relatives that she was going to visit? It's actually his father's family is based out in Medina, and also some of them, and her family was based out there. So there was already some type of relationship between the two towns. Okay, so he was 5 or 6. They go on this trip. On the return journey, Amina became ill and died. She actually died on the road in between Medina and Mecca on her way back. At that time, it wasn't called Medina yet. It was called Yathrib. So again, keep that in mind. You will come across the word Yathrib. So just remember, Yathrib is the name the city was called before Muhammad migrated. Once Muhammad migrated to it, it became known as the city. Medina literally means the city. The city of who? The city of God's final messenger. Okay? At this point, Muhammad was returned to Mecca and placed under the sole care and protection of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. Okay. So, who did he return with as a child? He was 5 or 6. Well, they had servants with them that were on the journey, traveling with them. They weren't just traveling by themselves. In his grandfather's care, Muhammad began to learn the rudiments of statecraft. Why is that? Because Abdul Muttalib was a chief in Mecca. He was a tribal leader. So basically, he learned the different diplomatic ways and the different political mechanisms and the different ways of running a society and running a community and organizing. He was learning that from a young age through his grandfather, who was the chief of the city. Mecca was Arabia's most important pilgrimage center. Why was it the most important pilgrimage center? Because of that temple that Abraham established there So all of Arabia would go there because they knew that that was a special place. They were not necessarily following the ways of Abraham. They had changed the ways of Abraham, introduced a lot of false practices, but nonetheless, they knew Mecca is special. That is the epicenter of the world. Okay? Abdul Muttalib was its most respected leader. Abdul Muttalib respected and honored treaties and displayed the finest of morals. So he was an upright man. He loved the poor and fed them in times of famine. He helped the pilgrims and restrained wrongdoers. So these are the characteristics of the grandfather, who basically is the caregiver and the mentor of Muhammad. So guess what's happening? He's basically getting molded. He's getting mentored, and he's picking up those things from his grandfather. This is before God chose him as a messenger. Before he became commissioned as a messenger, in his childhood, he's being prepared. That's the importance of learning the story, to see the environment that he comes from. Muhammad learned at an early age that good manners and morals were possible even in a time and place where the strong trampled upon the weak and the widow and the orphan were quite helpless. When Muhammad was 8 years old, his grandfather also died, leaving him in the care of his uncle Abu Talib. I hope that I didn't make a mistake earlier. Maybe I did in the age, when I said when his mom died and when his grandfather died. So his mom died when he's 6, his grandfather dies when he's 8. He left him in the care of his uncle Abu Talib. So Abu Talib is the son of Abdul Muttalib. Okay? That's the relationship. Abu Talib is the son of Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib is the son of Hashim. Okay? So Hashim is the grandfather of Muhammad. All right? Abu Talib went to protect, serve, defend, and honor Muhammad throughout the testing times of prophethood and until the day he died. Remember, we mentioned this earlier when we said he lost his supporter, Abu Talib. That's who the supporter is, his uncle. This is his father's brother. So basically, he took on his care after the grandfather passed away. It was under his tutelage that Muhammad grew up to become a fine young man known for his excellent manners and honesty. Under his tutelage as what? Well, Abu Talib, we're going to learn, he was a businessman. He was a merchant. So Muhammad would accompany him on trips, international trips, in fact. Okay? So in business, you got to develop a reputation. Some business people are crooks. They cheat and they lie and they deceive. And others are upright and moral and they have a great reputation. So you get to choose what you want to be. Okay? So Muhammad, under the tutelage of Abu Talib, grew up to become a fine young man known for his excellent manners and honesty. He was referred to as As-Sadiq and Al-Amin. So those are two descriptions, the truthful one and the trustworthy one. I want you to keep this in mind. So this was what everyone in society knew him as for 40 years. As soon as he preaches the message from God, they called him a liar. This is very painful. If you're a liar and people call you a liar, it doesn't really offend you. But if you're the most honest person and people accuse you and challenge your integrity, it really pains you. Right? As a youngster, Muhammad used to accompany his uncle on his business trips to Syria. We said the Levant, not Syria as in Syria today, the nation state, but the Levant, which is basically the eastern side of the Mediterranean. That includes Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and part of modern-day Iraq. All of that, in that time, it was called Syria or Sham, the Levant. And that was under the Byzantine Empire. So that's under the Eastern Roman Empire at the time. He thus learned the art of buying, selling, trading, and hence by the age of 25, he was skilled in these matters. Now, even before this, so we didn't mention this part, but even as a youngster, before he was a businessman, he learned how to be a shepherd. Because remember we said he learned the ways of the Bedouins. So how do Bedouins survive? Well, they have animals, they have livestock. Specifically, they have sheep, goats, and camels. So they're shepherds. They take care of the animals. They go from place to place to make sure to feed them and to graze them, and then they protect them and they bring them back home. And they move. They're nomadic. They go where there is water sources and where there is food for the animals to graze. So he learned that as well. And what he said later on in his ministry is every messenger of God learn to be a shepherd, because that's basically the ultimate role of a messenger, is to shepherd people and to care for the weak and to be at the pace of the weakest in the flock. And then he teaches all of us, he says, all of you are shepherds, and all of you will be asked about your flock. A man is a shepherd over his family, a woman is a shepherd over her husband's family, and the children are shepherds. Every single one of you is a shepherd. Okay, so that's where that analogy comes from. And if you're familiar with the Bible, there's the analogy of the shepherd as well. Jesus was a shepherd, so this is not a strange idea. Okay. He was often hired by people to trade for them with the great caravans and cities. It was at this time that Muhammad was hired by the Meccan businesswoman Khadija. Remember, we mentioned her name earlier? So Khadija heard about this, and she was a widow, and she had wealth. But again, at that time, women who did business, especially noble women, would not go in the marketplace themselves. That was below them. That's the job of slaves and servants. But she had money, she had capital. So she basically decided to partner up with Muhammad. That's the type of hiring him. He basically will sell the merchandise, and then they will split the revenues, because she had the capital. Now, Khadija is not actually dealing with Muhammad directly. Rather, she has her servants and slaves interact with Muhammad and also report back to her. So Khadija recognized and admired Muhammad's irreproachable character and skills, and proposed marriage to him, even though she was approximately 15 years older than he. Again, this particular aspect is debatable. Some scholars don't agree that she was 40 years of age, although that's the common story. It says that she was 40 when he was 25, but according to other calculations, it says that she was only 27. Yes, she was a widow, but she wasn't 40 years of age. At any rate, that's not something that's a big deal, but I just want you to be aware of this discrepancy. Now, how did she propose marriage to him? Again, there's a lot of details, and I want to add those details. It wasn't directly to him, and she didn't speak to him, because that, again, is not something that is appropriate, even at that time before the regulations of Islam came about. Rather, she basically spoke to her representatives to speak to his family, and then this is the way that the marriage eventually transpired. Muhammad accepted, and they lived together for almost 25 years until the death of Khadija. Remember, we said the death of Khadija was a very difficult time on him. It was the year of sadness. About 8 to 9 years after the revelation of the Quran, that's when she died. So basically, you're talking about 13-year ministry in Mecca. 8 years after the ministry started is when she passes away. During this time, and you notice there is a prayer that is said here whenever we mention her name, may Allah be pleased with her. That is a prayer that we say for all of the disciples of the Messenger Muhammad. Whenever their names are mentioned, we say, may Allah be pleased with them, because they are the original new Muslims, the original converts to Islam, the original Muslim community. And we appreciate them for their sacrifice and for supporting the Messenger Muhammad and for pushing forward the mission. During this time, although it was permissible, Muhammad did not marry any other wives. Their life together is a beautiful love story that produced 6 children, 2 sons and 4 daughters. Again, the sons die in infancy. They died very young. And 4 daughters, the 4 daughters survive, and they all survive until he becomes a messenger, and they all accept his message. They all are Muslims. Muhammad had always been a man inclined to think deeply and contemplate the wonders of the universe. At around the age of 40, he began to frequent a cave on the outskirts of Mecca known as Hira. So this is the name of the cave where basically it becomes very significant, because that's where the angel visits him, and that is where he gets commissioned to be the messenger of God. It was in this cave in the year 610 that the first passages or verses of the Quran were revealed to Muhammad. The Quran in its entirety would continue to be revealed over the next 23 years in different places and in different ways. Okay, so the Quran did not come all at once. It came over a period of 23 years, but the very beginning of it came when he was in the cave. Now, what would he do in the cave? Again, you'll come across different things that says he was meditating. I don't agree with that particular word. Rather, he was worshiping God the way he knew Abraham worshiped God. So he basically was performing some type of primitive salah. The salah that we perform, he was performing that form of worship, but not meditating, because meditation has to do with Eastern traditions. That has to do with Buddhism and Hinduism. His tradition is the tradition of Abraham, not Buddhism and not Hinduism. So be careful, again, what words you use. And I know, unfortunately, that's what's available in many of the common translations. So just be on the lookout for things like that. They're very subtle. Over the next 2 or 3 years after the first revelation, when we talk about revelation here, don't confuse it for the final book of the Protestant Bible known as the Book of Revelations, which talks about the final days, eschatology. Rather, we're talking about God communicating with his messenger. That word in Arabic is called al-wahi, which literally means divine communication. Okay? A subtle speech between God and one of his messengers. All right? So if the word is confusing to you, that's what it refers to. It refers to God speaking to the human messenger. In the first 2 to 3 years, he taught Islam secretly to those he trusted. Remember, I said in the first 3 years, it was an underground movement. However, when he started calling to Islam publicly, and again, that was all by the command of God, the hostility from the idol worshippers, which are the local community, the idol worshippers, the idolaters, increased, and Muhammad and his followers were subjected to abuse and harassment. The Quraysh tribe, which is his tribe, were the guardians of the Kaaba. They were taking care of God's house, the Temple of Abraham, the holy house to which all Arabs made pilgrimage. And it was a source of great prestige and profit. But it wasn't just a spiritual headquarters, it was also a business headquarters. Because whenever you have a lot of people coming, you have a lot of business taking place, right? Because people need to survive. So they need to eat, they need to drink, they need to exchange goods and so forth. So it was not only a spiritual or religious place, it was also a business place. Okay? That's why there is prestige and profit. Therefore, they became openly aggressive, and Muhammad himself would have been killed, except that his uncle Abu Talib's position and rank made it all but impossible. So they wanted to kill Muhammad. Like, they were so upset with him, they're like, we're just going to eliminate him. But his uncle Abu Talib, being one of the chiefs of the tribe, prevented that. Remember, we said Abu Talib was his supporter after his grandfather died. So from the age of 8 till the age of 48, so 40 years, he's got Abu Talib protecting him. So even though he was challenging the status quo, because of his uncle, they couldn't really deal with him in that way. They couldn't eliminate him. Nevertheless, plans were made to eradicate the so-called scourge, and the followers of Islam were harassed, tortured, and murdered. This is what is referring to when we spoke earlier. His disciples or his followers, his companions, were tortured. That's what it's referring to. This period of persecution culminated in 3 years of social and economic sanctions, resulting in severe deprivation and deaths from starvation. How history repeats itself. You know, the starvation that we're witnessing today in Gaza, and it's been taking place for over 22 months now, right? It was very similar to what the Messenger Muhammad and his early community dealt with in their own city, by their own people. So like when we talk about the Holy Land today, the Israelis are not from that land. They are European colonists who established a colonist post there, and they're doing this. But in the time of the Messenger Muhammad, their own people, their own cousins were dealing with them in this way. They had this social and economic sanctions against them. Approximately 1 year after the imposition of sanctions, Khadija died. So you see, actually, when you look into the story, Khadija, this wealthy businesswoman who supported the Messenger Muhammad, dies of starvation because that year of basically a complete blockade and a complete sanctions, where there is nothing being brought in, is going to affect people, even if they come from a elite background. So she died in poverty, although she was a rich person. And people should ask themselves this question, because again, many times people say, Khadija was a wealthy woman. How did she die? She had spent all her wealth supporting the ministry of Muhammad, and she died because of the sanctions. Also in that year, that was to become known as the year of sorrow, or the year of grief, or the year of sadness, Abu Talib died. Remember, we mentioned that briefly earlier, leaving the Meccans free to plot and plan to exterminate the Muslims. In response to their dire situation, Muhammad sent a group of Muslims to Abyssinia. Abyssinia is in East Africa. There was an empire in East Africa, the Empire of Aksum, to seek protection of the just Christian king, the Negus. So in East Africa, there was an empire, a Christian empire, and they had relations with Arabia at that time. That they basically had commercial relations, political relations. And Muhammad knew that this king was a just king who gave people in his sovereignty freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. So Muhammad told a big group of his followers, including his own daughter and her husband, to migrate, to go to East Africa. So East Africa receives Islam before Mecca accepted Islam. Something very important to consider. And that's why actually the roots of Islam are in Africa, in East Africa specifically, in this area of Abyssinia, which is modern day Eritrea and Ethiopia. It's Eastern Ethiopia, the nation state, but the exact location is actually Eritrea. But you got the whole East Africa, which is the Horn of Africa, from Somalia up to Djibouti to Eritrea and then Ethiopia. All that area is called East Africa, and that's where basically the empire of Aksum had flourished at the time. Persecution in Mecca grew even fiercer. Muhammad sought protection in the neighboring city of Ta'if. So Ta'if is another city, is outside of Mecca in the mountains, basically south, I want to say southeast of Mecca, in the mountains. Here he was met with great and open hostility and escaped beaten and bloody. Remember we said he was stoned? That's where he was stoned. He wasn't stoned in his own city. He was stoned in a town that he went to seek refuge in and to preach the message of God. And instead of giving him hospitality, they sent the foolish people in their town to drive him away and to beat him up and to stone him. So he left beaten and bloody. That was the most difficult day of his life, according to him. He walked from Mecca all the way to Ta'if. Now, I don't know if you've ever done hiking in the mountains, but this is a treacherous hike that is about 50 miles. This is not a short distance. He walked out of Mecca. He was in so much distress that his people had rejected him. He didn't even realize that he got to Ta'if. And instead of the people receiving him well, which is part of Arab hospitality, they basically had the worst type of reception for him. And in that city, he has different experiences. Again, I speak about this in different lectures, so I'll give you some references later. Here he was met with great and open hostility, escaped beaten and bloody. However, a turning point was at hand, for in that year, several people accepted Islam from the city of Yathrib, and Muhammad met with them. How did these people accept Islam? In the Hajj season. So Hajj was already happening from the time of Abraham, the pilgrimage. All of Arabia would come at a specific time. So Muhammad would go in the Hajj season, and he would go and visit the different tribes, and he would basically invite them. He would minister to them. And some people from the city of Yathrib, they accepted the message. They said, we accept you as the messenger of God. Having converted to Islam, so those are the early converts of Islam. And they're not from his own people. They're from a different city. The leaders of Yathrib made a secret pledge to protect the messenger should the disbelievers try to kill him. So now he has backing, because remember, he lost his uncle Abu Talib. So now he's got another tribe that's saying, we'll give you asylum. We'll take care of you. We'll protect you. Thus began the slow migration to Yathrib. Muhammad instructed his followers to leave Mecca individually or in small groups. This was very disturbing news for the Quraysh, for the tribe, and they decided there was no other option but to kill Muhammad and put a stop to the changes taking place once and for all. We will continue this brief biography in lesson 2, the Medinan period, where we will discover that divine intervention thwarts the murderer's plan, and the city of Yathrib soon becomes known as Al-Madina al-Nabawiyya, the prophet city or the prophetic city, or Medina for short. So our time is up. Hopefully we'll cover the rest of this in the next webinar. But I hope that you saw benefit in this and connected more with the Messenger Muhammad. That's the intention. The intention is that we get to know this man more, and it starts with learning more about his story, learning it briefly, and then developing a more robust understanding by going into it in depth. So this is a brief biography. There's other articles that give you more details. And then you can see some of my lessons where I have the Meccan period. So you see this article we just read. This is 13 years. Actually, it's 53 years of history. I did this in about 40 hours of video. So I'll share the link for all of you to check that out, the Meccan period. And in those, I'm not just going through chronological order. I'm actually extracting lessons. Okay? So with that, I'll stop the share. I'll open it up for Q&A. And I'm going to give you the article. So you have what I have right now, basically what I just read. I'm going to give you part 1 and part 2. I don't want to ruin it for you, but just so you can be aware of where I'm getting this info from. Okay, so this is part 1, which is what we read today. And then part 2 is right here. There's a whole website that's called The Prophet of Islam that I'm also going to share now. In the intro, you will see a short video that says, what do they say? What do they say about Muhammad? Okay, I'm gonna share the screen shortly, because remember we said like philosophers and different figures have spoken highly of the Messenger Muhammad, right? So check this out. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Share. And just listen briefly. We're not gonna. Why is this up? I don't want this. I want the other page right here. Okay.
We'll show you just 15 of the many selections from non-Muslims telling you what they think of the last prophet, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Dr. William Draper, in History of Intellectual Development of Europe, 4 years after the death of Justinian, AD 569, was born in Mecca in Arabia, the man who, of all men, has exercised the greatest influence upon the human race, to be the religious head of many empires, to guide the daily life of 1/3 of the human race, may perhaps justify the title of a messenger of God. Philip.
Okay, so just wanted to share that with you briefly. I'll let you finish the rest of that video on your own, okay? That's kind of self-explanatory. Some of you may be familiar with some of these personalities. They're non-Muslims, but they're giving basically their personal endorsements and not references, but their reviews of what they think of the ministry of the Messenger Muhammad. The final thing I wanted to share with you is is my series, which is about 40 episodes, actually 37 to be exact, which covers the Meccan period or the Meccan ministry of the Messenger Muhammad. Okay, so I'll share that, and you can actually look at it, because remember how I said there is certain things I want you to highlight, like the year of sorrow, since we spoke about it. So you'll see all these are in this particular list. So I hope that you benefit and you enjoy from this. And again, this is just the beginning. It's just scratching the surface. I can't tell you how important it is for us as new Muslims to become familiar with the Messenger Muhammad. Many of us just come in and we're basically just going with the motions. So when they tell us you got to make shahada, we say the shahada, but we don't actually know what we're saying. So we say, when we enter the door of Islam, I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God. But if I was to ask you, so tell me about this man, you don't really have much to say. You just say, well, he's the messenger of God. Well, tell me about him. Don't know much, right? And this is actually one of the greatest weaknesses of new Muslims. And one of the reasons why new Muslims may not grow and develop in Islam. And one of the sisters, I really appreciate her because she said, you know, she became a very close student, and she was attending my in-person classes. She joined the seminary program where I was teaching, and so I have a lot of respect for her. And she comes from the church. She loved God all her life. She wanted to actually go into ministry, but her father basically mocked her when she wanted to go into ministry. So she ended up going into law enforcement because her father was a cop. Long story short, she told me, you know, Ahmed, she calls me Sheikh Ahmed, you know, she gives me the title of respect, God bless her. And she says, I gotta be honest with you. She said, you know, all my life I've been learning about Jesus and knowing about Jesus. I know so much about Jesus, and I just don't know enough about Muhammad. And she's like, I'm really struggling with that. And I told her, thank you so much for sharing this. And that's why we basically have to adjust by learning more about the Messenger Muhammad and taking the opportunity to learn more about him, to learn about his life. And you know what's very interesting is the month we're about to enter, the lunar month, is known as the month of the birth of the Messenger Muhammad. It's the month of Rabi', which is the 4th month in the Islamic lunar calendar. So like Muslims in all over the world, this month is very significant for them because this is when they actually look into the story of the Messenger Muhammad and read it and review it and you know, look into different aspects of his life. So I hope that we can all put some time and investment into learning more about this man, because again, this is the way to God. He's the final messenger of God. If we want to be on the right side with God, we got to follow his ways. We got to follow his tradition. And you can't follow his ways and his tradition without knowing about the guy. You got to know about the man first. So you got to do things in order. And the first thing we got to do is learn. Just like I said earlier, we can't really worship God. We can't really love God until we know about God. That's why we should spend time learning about God's beautiful names and attributes, because that's what's going to make the relationship that we have with him meaningful. Likewise, before we start practicing the tradition of the Messenger Muhammad, what's known as the Sunnah, we got to know who he was. What was his life like? And then it will be way more meaningful when we practice his tradition, when we worship God the way he worshiped God. I hope that you are following along what I'm trying to say. I see that some of you have said, thank you, so you're very welcome. Thank you for attending. One of you says, when is the next webinar? Well, I have webinars every Wednesday of the month typically. But when is the next session on this subject? Maybe next month, because they have other topics set up for me. But let's hope that we can do it next month, and we'll read the next article and hopefully do some commentary on it as well. But in the meantime, again, I want you to utilize the resources I just shared with you. So I shared with you the video we all watched before from the website Life with Allah. Okay, and I want you to check out all those articles because it speaks about developing love for the Messenger Muhammad. Okay, that's very important. We will not attain proper faith until we love God and his messenger more than anyone else. So you don't love anyone until you get to know them. But once you get to know them truly and genuinely, you will develop love for them. So let's start in that process. The second one was what we just read, the brief biography, the Meccan period. Next time we'll meet, we'll do the brief biography in Medina, part 2. And then I gave you the very brief website called Prophet of Islam. You can share this with non-Muslims because that's who the target audience is. And that's where some of those non-Muslim philosophers and personalities speak highly of the Messenger Muhammad. And then finally, I shared with you my series titled Building the Foundation, the Meccan period of the Messenger's ministry. So Building the Foundation is 36 episodes. Each one is about 1 hour to 1 hour and a half. And the reason why I share with you my content is because you have access to me. So if anything doesn't make sense to you, then you can always reach out to me and ask me the questions. You know, I'm not really a big famous speaker and a celebrity that you can't really get in touch with. I am here for you. I'm your servant. That's what I specialize in. And when I did that series, although that series was in a community of predominantly born Muslims, but in my mind, I was speaking to my NMA family, my new Muslim family. So I was not really using Arabic language. I was translating everything, being very cautious in how I present the information. So I would love to also hear your feedback about this. I've taught the subject of the life of the messenger multiple times, but this is a start for you. Since today we spoke about the Meccan period. So basically, look, today 1 hour, but if you want the details, there is 40 more hours. Okay, so that'll give you like a lot of time to basically reflect and ponder. And each one of the lines that we did, basically today, each one of the lines, basically I extract a lot of lessons from it and break it down in great detail. So hopefully you'll see that is beneficial. How do you reach me? Well, you just email me. My email is Ahmed at NMA at newmuslimacademy.org. Ahmed at newmuslimacademy.org. That's my name. Spell it with an A, because don't write Ahmed. Some people spell Ahmed a different way. So this is Ahmad, not Ahmed. Okay. So you're more than welcome to reach out. If you don't remember this one, you'll remember this one. Help desk at newmuslimacademy.org. If you send them a message and tell them I want to talk to Ahmed or connect me with him, then they'll do so as well. If we can be of service, you have any questions, if you would like to have a consultation one-on-one, if you don't want to ask your questions in a public setting, then we have consultations. Make sure that you benefit from all the services that we have in NMA. We have Quran lessons to help you with reading the Quran at a basic level. And then we have classes on Salah with my colleague, Dr. Sajid Umar. So he does a series every month, 3-part series on Salah, just going deep into everything related to Salah, because Salah is one of the most important things and one of the most challenging things for us as new Muslims. And then the themes that I speak about. And then on top of that, we usually have a guest speaker once a month talking on different topics that hopefully are all relevant to your experiences as new Muslims. We look forward to your feedback. If you have any suggestions, any topics that you feel you would like us to address, please let us know. Not here, because I may forget right now, but please email help desk and give us things that maybe are troubling you, maybe things that you wish you can find answers for, and we'll make it happen. We're here to serve you, and we're here to basically join you on this journey towards God, getting to know him, getting to love him, serve him, show gratitude to him, obey him, and to attain salvation. Okay? I want to join, but it's 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I don't know what this is referring to. 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm Pacific Standard Time, and it's 7 p.m. my time. So I don't know what you're talking about when it says joining. You're talking about maybe Saturday, the class on Saturday? The class on Saturday, it depends. It's not always at 3 a.m. It's actually typically at 11 a.m. on Saturdays. So the reason why his is that time is because he's based in London. He's based in Manchester. So it's based on his time. And of course, NMA is not just for people in America, it's for people all over the world. So my colleague, Dr. Sajid, is based in Northern England. So that's why there is a time difference. I'm based on the West Coast. I'm in California. So we try again to give timings that would be suitable for people. You can always look at the recordings, by the way, even if you don't join the live session with Dr. Sajid, we have the recordings. Reach out to Help Desk and they will provide you with the recordings. If you want my previous recordings, I have a link for them as well. So that's usually something that I give as well for those who ask. Let's see. This is like, I think, a list of a lot of the things that we've done in NMA. Well, my things specifically, for those who ask. Okay. All right. Any questions, any comments, any complaints, any feedback? I'll open it up for you. Feel free to leave if you need to leave because we're already over time. But I just want to honor anyone who has any questions. Jacqueline, you had your hand up. Also, if you don't want to type, if you want me to unmute your mic, enable your mic, I can do that. If you'd like to speak to the class, more than welcome to do so. Okay, I don't see anything. No questions in the Q&A box. Nothing in the chat. Wa iyyakum to Shahina. Shahina said, Jazakallahu khairan, which means may Allah reward you generously. And the response to that is, may Allah reward you as well. So thank you all. May Allah accept from us. May Allah forgive us our shortcomings. I'll conclude with a short prayer. So since we were talking about the Messenger Muhammad, the best prayer to say in relation to the Messenger Muhammad is to say, "Oh Allah, bless the Messenger Muhammad, elevate his mention and rank, shower him with protection and grace." That is how we show appreciation to him. We ask God to reward him because we cannot give him anything, but rather we ask God to grant him these blessings. Likewise, at the conclusion of gatherings, we have a prayer called the prayer for expiation of sin in a gathering. So in case I said something wrong, there was any slip of the tongue, any expressions that were not the most appropriate, then we ask God to forgive us for those shortcomings. So the prayer is Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Allah, you are far above any imperfection. We testify that you are the only one deserving of worship. We glorify you, we thank you, and we praise you. We seek your forgiveness, and we repent to you. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sallam. We ask you, Allah, to bless the Messenger Muhammad, to elevate his mention and rank, and to shower him with protection and grace. With that, I will leave you all in the protection of Allah. Until next time, take care and stay involved in learning, and ask Allah to help you to get to know him better, to get to know the Messenger Muhammad better, and to get to know Islam better. Take it gradually, and don't overwhelm yourself. There is an ocean of information out there. And the reason why I don't usually recommend books on this subject is because I don't want you to drown in something. So I like to look at small articles and then dissect them and just open up the subject for you. I have a book here in front of me, actually, because a lot of times people ask me what's a good reference. So this is a very brief book. I've taught it previously. It's called Muhammad, An Authentic Overview of His Life and Mission. It's also a good reference to start off for those of you who ask. So I'll share that. Let me just open up the, let's see. Okay, An Authentic Overview of His Life and Mission. Yep, it's very affordable. It's $5, $5.7. So it's not expensive. Can we say the short salawat? I don't know what you're referring to. So short salawat, basically, salawat literally means the prayers that are said for the Messenger Muhammad. So basically we turn to God to bless the Messenger Muhammad. And there are different forms of saying these statements. I'll give you an article about that. I don't know what you mean by the short form. So I don't know what you're referring to. If you want to explain that, it'll help me get a better idea of what you have in mind. I don't want to make any assumptions. So this is a good article about this subject. So I'll invite you all to also bookmark this and check it out. What about the book, The Sealed Nectar? It's a nice book, but it's not a book that was written originally in English. It was written in Arabic, and many people who are native English speakers have complained about it, that it's not very reader-friendly because it was a translation from another language. So when you want to learn about any subject, you want to ensure that it's very readable and that you're enjoying the read. You don't want to be burdened by the read. So the style of writing in Arabic is different than the style of writing in English. It's not exactly the same thing. So that's that. It's a great book originally, but I've heard negative reviews about the translation that's available in English. Now, if you speak Arabic or you speak a language that's similar to Arabic, maybe you don't have that issue. But for a native English speaker, I've heard from multiple folks like that, they did not enjoy it. And they actually turned them off of the subject. So that's very scary. In fact, I'll tell you the story of my aunt. When my aunt converted to Islam, my uncle's wife, she went and performed the pilgrimage, and they told her this is a great book. So she went and purchased the book so she can learn more about the Messenger Muhammad. But she had such a hard time with the book, and she was turned off from the whole subject. She stopped wanting to learn about him. So, first impressions are everlasting. But later on, she did acquire a book that is written in perfect English that she was really able to enjoy. So that's what we have to know, is that not all the books in the market may be suitable for all readers. There is actually one that I would recommend, which is written for children, but I think it's great. And again, our level Islamically as new Muslims is like that of children. So let me see if I can find it. Is this it? Let's see. Yeah, it's called The Simple Sirah. So I think it's 3 volumes. So I would recommend this, especially for younger readers. And again, it's written in English. It wasn't translated. Yeah, I think it's part 1 and part 2. It's 2-part. So and the one I shared here, I already sent it, right? Yep, I did. Ooh, something is off here. Did I send part 1 and part 2? I only see one of them. Yeah, I only see part 2 for some reason. So this is part 1. Okay. All right. So with that, we can call it a day. Take care, everybody. Assalamu alaikum.